My new story, really revenge story, I hope all good. Subscribe for more emotionally gripping Reddit stories every week. The new house. The entitled stranger in my garage. There is a strange kind of silence you experience when walking into a house that hasn't been lived in 4 years. Not peaceful, not eerie, just empty. The feeling I had when I stepped through the gate of the house I had just bought in the heart of the capital city in Asia. Honestly, I thought I was winning at life. It had been left mid-renovation, with a padlock securing the main entrance. But no actual door lock, no gate either, no sense of privacy or ownership, at least not yet. The place had been untouched for nearly 3 years. The previous owners, old family friends, had moved abroad and urgently needed cash, so I got it for a great deal. Until I walked into my garage and found a motorcycle parked there, as if someone thought this was their parking spot. It wasn't mine. It didn't belong to the former owners either. It just sat there. I was stunned, not sure whether to laugh or be angry. This wasn't a communal lot. This was my home now, mid-60s. He lingered for 15 minutes, then gave up and left, pushing his bike along with him. Irritated, no, furious. Delivery riders would hop over the threshold like it was a shortcut. It was like the house didn't exist in people's minds anymore. Just a vacant patch of earth. People still treated it like it was public space. The interruptions slowed. People finally started to realize this place. Hi guys, my house was no longer abandoned. He banged at the gate like it owed him money. Wires protruding from plastered walls, like veins ripped from a body. And my utility bill had a strangely high water charge, despite me living alone with 3 dogs. Hidden, slow drips, poorly insulated joints, all contributing, I assume. So I did what any rational person would do. I pushed the bike out to the road, called a gate installation company, and had a solid metal gate installed the very same day. Later that evening, a man came knocking, tall, slim, wiry, gray hair. They weren't sure what he meant at the time, but told me to watch out. I watched him from the window, like I had stolen something from him by buying this property. It was the first warning shot of what would become a battle of quiet warfare between me and the neighbor from hell. I'm a 6-foot guy with 3 large dogs. I mind my business, but I can handle trouble if it knocks. A house was secret. The way he lingered outside even when he didn't need to, it was like he couldn't accept that this house was mine now. The house had been lifeless for years, but you could still feel the ghosts of habitation in every corner. Tools abandoned mid-project, unfinished tile work, and the strangest part, never introduced himself. He's behind a locked gate, I said calmly. Maybe don't provoke him. Just short glances. Sharp, calculating. In the first week, I caught multiple strangers casually parking in front of the gate. I hung up a bold, nitrogen monoxide parking, active residence sign. That helped. But something still felt off. The top 2 floors were rented out, likely his main source of income. A mechanic in his younger years, he was now retired, judging by his slow, deliberate gait and the smell of old grease still lingering on his clothes. I noticed that the water meter spun at odd hours when no taps were open. I blamed the leaks at first. The house was full of them, but the nagging doubt remained, especially because the numbers didn't add up. And then there was the neighbor. He wasn't just rude, he was possessive. He acted like I was the invader. My friends, the previous owners, had warned me. Apparently, he'd been furious when they sold the house, said it would disrupt his system. I figured I'd be fine. I'm not exactly someone people mess with casually. Still, there was something in his eyes, the way he stared at the gate. He never welcomed me. That's when I realized I wasn't dealing with a nosy old man. I was dealing with someone who had something to hide. Meet the neighbor, old resentments, new problems. About a week after settling in, I finally got a full look at the old man who lived next door. His house stood tall, 3 stories high, though it looked like he only occupied the ground floor. Our first real encounter wasn't friendly. It happened when one of my dogs, Charlie, the boldest of the 3, barked through the gate at him one morning. The man snapped, "Control your dogs. This isn't a zoo," he barked. No good morning, no smile, Just straight up hostility. I stared at him for a beat. The man scoffed and shuffled back into his compound, muttering something about the neighborhood going downhill. That was it. The moment I knew we weren't going to be friends. Later that day, I got a message from a mutual acquaintance who lived a few streets over. He'd heard that I'd bought that house and wanted to give me a bit of unsolicited advice. Watch your neighbor, he said. Real petty tyrant stuff. He's always up to something. Very controlling, thinks he runs the street. Apparently, he'd complained to the former owners about their renovations, the color of their gates, even the sound their water pump made at night. But he also had a reputation for being resourceful. People whispered that he'd once hooked his electricity to a streetlight during a billing dispute, that he'd gotten into trouble years ago for a shared internet connection scam with a neighbor who moved away. It all sounded like urban legend. Until I started paying attention, or maybe the municipal line had been interrupted. These things happen in the city. And then came the water issue. The strange behavior, flickering pressure, and gut feelings. It happened on a Thursday. I was in the middle of a long shower when I noticed something odd. The water pressure suddenly dropped to a pathetic trickle. At first, I thought it was but then, faintly, I heard something outside. A low mechanical hum. Constant, familiar. It was a water pump. My neighbor's water pump. I wrapped myself in a towel and sat quietly by the kitchen window, staring out at the thin line of boundary wall that separated our properties. That shouldn't have mattered, except for the timing. It kicked on right when my pressure dropped. Coincidence? Maybe. But something in my gut said otherwise. So I waited. After about 10 minutes, the humming stopped. I went back into the bathroom and turned the faucet. Full pressure. In that time, I'd used water normally. Showers, dog baths, washing my car, watering the garden, and yet the meter readings were high, too high, instant, strong, clean. Every time his pump ran, my water pressure dropped. Most were crumpled, outdated, and irrelevant. But a few stood out. My heart rate picked up. I checked another tap. Same result, sure, a few, but enough to cause this kind of usage. Even with the suspected theft, my bill wouldn't break $5 a month. No chance. Then, another. It was undeniable now. Was he using my water? I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe the pipes were just interconnected in some weird way. Maybe this was a quirk of city infrastructure, but my instincts didn't buy that. I did some quick math in my head. I'd been living here for just under 2 weeks, almost like someone else was drawing water too. What if the houses shared an ancient water line and this was all just a city planning issue? That evening, I dug through old bills left behind by the former owners. Water bills, steadily increasing over the last 2 years. The house had been empty during that time. Leaks, and especially near the main pipeline that fed water into my tank. I took photos of my water meter before bed and first thing in the morning. The numbers were rising even when I was asleep, and nobody in my house was using a drop. I'd never noticed it before. Something wasn't adding up, and the only new variable in this equation was my grumpy neighbor and his conveniently timed water pump. Now, let me be clear. Water in our country is cheap, dirt cheap. But it wasn't about the money, and he thought no one would ever find out. It was the entitlement, the idea that someone could just help themselves to what I sent theirs, and do it so confidently that they'd even try to hide it. It made my skin crawl, but I still didn't want to act prematurely. What if I was wrong? So I did what anyone with a sneaky neighbor should do. I watched, digging deeper, the proof I needed. In the following days, I became hyper-aware of everything related to my water supply. Every time I noticed a dip in pressure, I listened carefully. Sure enough, like clockwork, that faint, mechanical whine would echo from my neighbor's side of the wall. His water pump was running, and when his pump stopped, boom, my water pressure surged back like nothing ever happened. I wasn't just suspicious anymore. I was convinced, but to be sure, I started collecting proof. I logged every drop in pressure, every time his motor kicked on. That wasn't a leak, it was a leach. So I decided to take a closer look outside, near the walls, around the old tap. And that's when I saw it. A slim PVC pipe, running low along the edge of the wall, almost blending into the cement. It didn't match the piping style used in the rest of my house. It didn't connect to anything I used, but it slipped through a crack in the shared boundary wall, straight into the neighbor's property. I crouched down and just stared at it for a few moments. That's when it hit me. This man had casually tapped into my water system during the years this house sat empty. Well, guess what? I had found out. And I wasn't just going to fix the pipe, I was going to fix everything. Starting with a bit of clever payback. The plan: no yelling, just revenge. Now, I could have stormed over to his gate and called him out. I could have shouted, threatened, even called the water board. But where's the satisfaction in that? He'd just lie, or worse, tear out the pipe before anyone could catch him red. I needed something cleaner, smarter, something that would teach him a lesson he wouldn't forget. And I realized I didn't need to damage anything. When water drops below a certain level, the valve sends a signal to the pump to switch on. And when full it switches off. I didn't need to break a single law. And if the wiring in the house is as outdated as the guy's attitude, that strain can fry circuits and trip the whole system. All I had to do was turn off my own water supply. See, here's the thing about water pumps in our part of the world. They rely on float valves inside rooftop tanks. But what if no water comes in? Then the pump just keeps running. It keeps trying and trying until it overheats. He wouldn't just lose the pump, he'd lose the entire grid. So I waited patiently, observed, watched for his pump to turn on, and when it did, I walked outside, opened my valve box, and twisted my main line off. No shouting, no noise, just one quiet click. My water was off. His pump was now pulling air. Midnight consequences. And down he goes. The next few hours were quiet. Until they weren't. Around 3 a.m., it started, and he didn't even know how or why yet. Voices, doors creaking open, lights flicking on and off. The landlord, my charming neighbor, got slapped with a fine. Not just a small one either. Hundreds of dollars, a massive hit in our economy. You could tell something was wrong. Tenants murmuring, confused, no water, then a blackout. The power failed completely. I watched from my window, silent. It didn't take long before panic turned into shouting. The tenants weren't just confused anymore. They were furious. And in our city, cutting off water and power in a rented property, that's a legal no-go. Major fines, even criminal charges in extreme cases. The guy was screwed. By morning, the complaints were already filed. The tenants called the local police to report a violation of rental codes. Then came the real kicker. Both tenants moved out. That was his income. Gone overnight. And now, he had to refund their deposits on top of paying the fine, repairing the pump, and hiring someone to fix his burned-out electrical wiring. He told them it was probably a transformer issue, that he was checking the breakers. Panic creeping in like a fog. Toilets not flushing because he couldn't bathe, couldn't charge his phone, and couldn't sleep with the power out. Fans stopping their voices carried across the wall like a storm. The buzz of life gone. And me. They demanded to know why no one had warned them about infrastructure issues. Any interruption caused by landlord negligence is an immediate fine. I turned my water supply back on. Problem solved. The meltdown. Screams at 3 a.m. You ever hear the sound of justice happen in real time? I have. It started as confusion. One of the tenants opened a window and called out to the other. Do you have water? No. And the lights just went out. His savings, if he had any, were gone. The repairs alone would take weeks. Meanwhile, the word had spread in the neighborhood. Then came the shouts from inside. The old man, the neighbor, tried to hide the chaos at first, but that lie didn't hold. By 3:30 a.m., the pump was still humming, weak and uneven now, and the tenants were wide awake, demanding answers. One of them, a younger guy who worked nights, stormed downstairs yelling that he was late for work. The other tenant, a couple with a baby, weren't any quieter. I didn't need to be close to hear it. From my balcony in the shadows, I stood there watching the empire fall, quietly sipping tea, dogs asleep at my feet. The irony, all I had done was turn a single valve. The fallout, complaints, fines, and empty rooms. By morning, the consequences had rolled in like thunder. The tenants had already filed complaints. In our city, water and electricity are considered essential services under tenancy law. The fine, equivalent to nearly $500, a gut punch in our economy. Add to that the pressure to refund both deposits, cover electrical repairs, and replace the pump. The man was sinking fast. By midweek, both tenants had packed up and left. One didn't even say goodbye, just called a moving truck, tossed everything in, and vanished. The old man pleaded with them to stay, said he'd fix it all. But truss, once cracked, doesn't seal back up, so is it. By Thursday, there were 2 empty floors and 1 broken man living alone beneath them. And then came the cherry on top. He couldn't afford to fix the issues quickly. Nobody was going to rent from him again. His little kingdom of silent theft and stubborn pride crumbled into dust. The face-off, silent truths at the gate. That Saturday, just as I was feeding the dogs, I heard a knock at my gate. There he was, the old man. His eyes were heavy, not angry, not anymore, just tired. He cleared his throat. "Did you turn off your water the other night?" I looked him in the eye and smiled calmly. "Oh yeah, had a leak, needed the plumber to check it. So I shut it off overnight, didn't want it flooding while I slept." He didn't flinch, but I saw it in his eyes. He knew, and he knew I knew, but he also knew he couldn't prove a thing, couldn't accuse me without exposing what he'd done. He stood there for another moment, then nodded slightly. "All right," he muttered, and walked away. That was the last conversation we ever had. The cleanup, erasing every trace. The following week, I hired a proper plumber, the best in the area. We examined every inch of my piping, traced every outlet, and sealed every unnecessary extension. The line that disappeared through the wall, gone. I even reinforced the boundary wall and installed a new layer of piping. Inside, secure, tamper-proof, safe, clean, untouchable. The house was no longer a fixer-upper. It was mine. Now my garden was thriving again. The dogs were happy. The water meter, finally calm. The house felt like home because no one was secretly living off of it anymore. The reflection, water, power, and justice. It's funny how small things, drops of water, clicks of valves, can carry so much weight. This wasn't about money. It was never about the $5 water bill. Someone too new, too clueless, too soft, too notice. It was about principle, about a man who thought the world owed him something and took from others to balance his own scales. But the truth is, every stolen drop adds up. Every selfish choice leaves a ripple. And when that ripple finally circles back, it hits like a wave. He thought I was just some kid who bought an old house. He thought wrong. I didn't need to shout, didn't need to fight. All I needed was patience. Because sometimes karma isn't loud. Sometimes it's not dramatic. Sometimes karma just turns off the tap and watches you drown in your own mess.